Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This is going to be my Rick and Morty Season 4, Episode 6 video. It was a non-stop train, literal and metaphorical train of references, so we'll break it down. Way more references than a normal episode, on purpose though. If you're new to my channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the episodes. We'll do a Rick and Morty merch giveaway too. All you have to do to enter, just be a subscriber and leave your favorite moment from the episode on the video. Careful for spoilers. If you have not seen the episode yet, we'll do top 10 WTF and Easter eggs as we go along. Even though this should be like a top 50, I'll try to cram these into different vignettes as they go through the episode. Starting with number 10, the title of the episode. The episode was titled Never Ricking Morty, which is a reference to the movie Never Ending Story, which most of you have probably seen, about a boy who has to create a new story in the real world in order to keep the fake universe inside a book alive. There were a couple examples of this happening in the episode, people's beliefs, keeping worlds or universes alive, or in the case of Morty, jumping the shark on purpose in order to escape the story simulation as Rick tells him to start spitting out terrible story ideas. So the show used the episode to make fun of themselves as writers while referencing almost every single twist and major moment that the show has ever had. That's why you saw the collision of things like Bird Person happening separately from Phoenix Person and Tammy, Snuffles, all the Meeseeks, Evil Morty coming back, and so many other things from earlier episodes. So I'll point them out as we go along through the episode. But I saw a couple people in my timeline that were confused on why they were doing things this way. The episode was supposed to be about bad stories on purpose in the most meta way possible. But the writers were also making fun of themselves and Dan and Justin, like later in the episode when Rick talks about the story episode getting too meta, breaking the fourth wall, saying that they would have done interdimensional cable instead if they wanted to get so meta. He broke the fourth wall a couple times during the episode. Big shout out for the virus in real life.
Nobody's out there shopping with this virus.
The actual credited writer on the episode, Jeff Loveness, said in his own words that the episode is about being trapped in the narrative choke of capitalism, the broken worlds we escape through love, in Paul Giamatti's abs, which Morty has a really gross name for in the episode. Also, this writer is also probably leaving the show because Marvel just hired him to write Ant-Man 3. So if you're a fan of the Marvel stuff, Marvel movies, Disney Plus series, there are actually a couple different former Rick and Morty writers that are working on new Marvel projects for the next couple of years. Dan Harmon himself also helped out on the Doctor Strange movie, punching up some of their really meta multiverse stuff. But number 9, the episode starts with the Infinity Story train flying through space. The train itself is a reference to the Cartoon Network show Infinity Train, which is an anthology series about a girl traveling through a train with different rooms that test her before she can return home. It's also kind of a parody of the Infinity Train episode of Adventure Time, the dungeon train that Finn gets trapped on when he has this existential crisis and he goes through room by room and Jake has to shake him out of his funk in order to get him to come back to the real world. Rick and Morty sort of takes this concept to the nth degree, using every single story device character twist in previous episode of Rick and Morty. The Tickets Please man with the sick abs is voiced by Dan Harmon. He's kind of a parody of the Indiana Jones Last Crusade Tickets Please scene. They bring that joke back around a couple times through the episode. The bar is a very Star Wars cantina looking style bar. Each room on the train just represents a different challenge, a different story device, and a different group of characters, but they all start colliding by the end of the episode. The person's perspective that we take is revealed to be Rick in disguise, who later meets Morty, also disguised separately as a woman, who were trying to find a way to escape the train. The real villain of the episode is actually capitalism, according to the writer. That was what that end tag scene was about Morty buying stuff, buying the train. Go out and buy, Morty. Nobody's buying anything because of this virus. Within the episode, though, Paul Giamatti plays the villain, who's an evil conductor, who's kind of a parody of the fandom and people yelling at Dan and Justin about what the story of the show should actually be. Within the episode, though, he's trying to quote-unquote break the fifth wall by stealing all the narrative potential from Rick and Morty, stealing the show from them effectively, who are later revealed to not even be the main versions of Rick and Morty because this is all happening inside a simulation, which is another reference to the Inception episode with the simulations within the simulations. We'll get to that twist in a second too, but remember that every single part of the episode was made to reference some earlier episode, so that's why everything seems so familiar as they went through room to room. That's why when he sits down at the bar, you notice the snake tap in the bug face. It reminds you of the snakes from Season 4, Episode 5, Smooth Snake Jazz, and then Crumbopulous Michael's head here with his other tap. The man that Rick sits down next to is voiced by Clancy Brown, who's voiced characters before on the show. There were a ton of big celebrity guest stars during the episode. He sets off the first fake premise. Everyone on the train is heading to destroy Rick, the man in the white coat, because he wronged them somehow. Rick, who regularly calls out story tropes in episodes, calls them out for it. What are we, taking turns telling stories like we're little girls at a sleepover party? Rick's many arms and 3 butts that he uses to fart reply to him is just the writers referencing all the burps and fart jokes that Rick always has. And even though this is Rick in disguise sitting at the bar here, the person voicing this character before he changes back into Rick is actually Nolan North. Number 8, the next section of the train that he goes into is Christmas themed. It turns into a reference of an earlier episode from season 3, the one where Rick and Jerry made a temporary truce, but because Jerry was still separated from Beth, he refuses to let Jerry inside the house at the end of the episode. Goombie winds up standing outside in the cold, all lonely, just like Jerry did. Also, that was the same episode that Clancy Brown guest starred as a separate character in. Rick then runs into Morty, who's inside the body of the woman who feels himself up before changing back, because of course Morty would do something like that. It's revealed that the previous story card that he came from was one where everybody dated Rick, and it's supposed to be a bunch of different alien women, but one of them is a Yoda in the background and another one is a man, so take that for what you will. He says a lot of this stuff isn't canon through the episode too, because a lot of the jokes later in the episode are about canon itself, the things that are official to the show and things that are just meant to be one-off jokes. The next vignette is Rick playing with a giant snow wolf, dating an ice queen whose romantic rival is apparently the concept of time. This woman over here sitting at the table also looks like a parody of Elsa from Frozen. Rick starts shouting out story tropes, figuring out that the train itself is amplifying and linking unrelated narrative fields. That's a callback to the episode where, at the end, Jerry made a reference to the A story and the B story of the episode being related by a common theme, and Rick gets really pissed off with him, saying, "There's no connection, it's complete coincidence, Jerry." That's because in real life, Dan Harmon said that he doesn't like the idea that every single story arc in episodes always have to be connected to each other all the time, and feels like that's kind of a tropey thing to do. For pretty much the rest of the episode, they keep referencing different story devices, the most famous one being the Dan Harmon story circle, which itself is a reference to Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. If you're a big Simpsons fan too, even The Simpsons did a parody about the Dan Harmon story circle. If you watch the behind the scenes of the TV show Inside the Writers' Room, you can also see them using that. They really do use the Dan Harmon story circle inside the Rick and Morty Writers' Room. He makes his big interdimensional cable shout out. They're supposedly doing another real interdimensional cable episode, but because they reference it so much during this episode, I'm kind of wondering about that now. They at least said that they might go back to that. This is where the episode metaphorically and literally starts to go off the rails because the evil conductor, played by Paul Giamatti, is trying to use them to generate enough narrative energy to break the fifth wall, which isn't a real thing that exists. It's just a meta reference to the show always breaking the fourth wall because Rick knows that he's inside a TV show, which he references a couple times through the episode, like when he references interdimensional cable versus doing one-off episodes. There's a big Jackie Chan shout out. The train's AI references continuity jumping off the rails. He grabs a tank of continuity that he says will be useful later. The number 7 is revealed that all this was happening inside a Blitz and Chips life simulation game like Morty's previous episode where he lived out that life then came out and was a little confused about what was real, what was fake, and it winds up being the Tickets Please man who is experiencing all this. Then it turns into a bit of a Nightmare on Elm Street movie as the man starts floating in the air, getting cut in half. They call him Floaty Blood Man later in the episode. Because within the Nightmare on Elm Street series, when you die inside your dreams, you also die in a similar way inside the real world. I also love that after this, Rick says that he'd rather die than write out the rest of this story, which is a reference to the fact that episodes are typically only between 21 and 22 minutes long without commercials. Then in another reference to bad writing, they revealed that this is all a fake training tape being used by guards to illustrate how to do their jobs, which Rick and Morty within the story train hijack, referencing how nothing makes sense because they're appearing out of nowhere. Everything is appearing out of nowhere. The way the cops are talking to each other too is kind of like their story police. They're policing each other's stories, which is a joke about writers' rooms and writers policing each other's story ideas. Rick yells at Morty for being too meta because he watches YouTube videos of people reacting to other YouTube reaction videos, which is actually something that happens in real life. I also love that while this is all happening and they're calling out all these story tropes, the Tickets Please man is still alive and screaming, floating past them in the window. Rick breaks the fourth wall again when he says they're going into an act break. If you had been watching this episode on TV, right after this they go to a commercial break. Then number 6 come back with a Bird Person vignette where he and Rick sing a song together about Bird Person flying through the air, which itself is revealed to be part of another person's story inside another car about musical episodes. Notice all the Easter eggs from previous musical ideas from Rick and Morty episodes, like there's a poster from Tiny Rick where he's getting ready to sing his song about being Tiny Rick. There's a Get Swifty poster behind him. There's Morty flying out of a giant butt. There's a poster over on the other side that's a parody of Sound of Music. This alien is a joke about the Cats movie. This is one about Phantom of the Opera. This is one about Hairspray. This is Shakespeare over here. I'm not sure what the donkey suit is a reference to, but there's even a poster of a Meeseeks box in the background. So because this is a musical car, apparently there was a Meeseeks musical inside this reality. Then number 5, in the next vignette, it's revealed that Floaty Blood Man from Blitz and Chips is someone that this alien worships as a god who thinks that he created the universe that they exist inside as part of this weird cult. They also believe that not having sex is keeping the universe within Floaty Man from flying apart. That's more of a joke about incels, I think, than anything else. After which he immediately does it with this woman. Turns out he was right because the universe starts to collapse around them, as Morty then starts to put him out of his misery. They call back to this joke at the end of the episode when Jesus tries to call out to his father, who instead of being the God that you would expect from the Bible, is actually Floaty Man God. Number 4, Rick and Morty try to derail the train, or at least slow it down, by telling intentionally bad stories, but the stories that he tells are so bad that they wind up meshing with the other tropes of the episode, and it doesn't work the way they want it to. They call out the Bechdel test, which is a real thing. The way that Rick describes it in the episode, though, all this Beth and Summer stuff is supposed to be bad on purpose. I love how Morty seems weirdly stuck on the concept of scorpions, though. Every different one of his stories devolved into a story about scorpions. Also inside Morty's fake story, there's a picture of his son Morty Jr. There's a whole army of Gazorpazorps with evil Morty later when they use the concept of Jesus to completely hijack the story. Number 3, we meet the evil conductor, Paul Giamatti's Storylord character, who Rick says is a parody of Space Frasier meeting the Matrix. Like I said earlier in the video, he's also a bit of a parody of the fans, or the angrier fans, that try to tell Dan and Justin what the show should be doing and what it shouldn't be doing. He proceeds to make fun of Rick and the show itself, saying it barely makes any sense nor has any real narrative cohesion, spiraling through the multiverse with no rules, burping, semi-improvised dialogue. Then when he starts pounding them, they crash through the walls of the train. That's a reference to breaking story walls like breaking the fourth wall. The first one is Morty inside the Citadel of Ricks, then Morty in the military as a veteran, then Rick as a professor trying to create the artificial world of the show, who then gets killed by an older version of this same war veteran Morty, who just keeps saying, "Don't worry, it's not canon, nothing out there's canon." Rick also gets kind of pissed off at the conductor because they wind up blowing Aberdolf Linkler coming back, saying that this could have been canon, meaning that the writers, Dan and Justin, probably won't be bringing him back in real life for an episode anytime soon, just because of this joke. Number 2, things get really crazy with references when they bring back Snuffles, all the dogs in their mechs fighting cats in mechs. Rick fights Phoenix Person while Tammy and Summer fight with lightsabers, meaning they probably won't bring those characters back anytime soon for an episode either. Then the writers said that this giant evil Morty scene is meant to be a bit of a Game of Thrones parody for the Long Night episode. I guess that makes evil Morty the Night King in this scenario, who's leading an army of Gazorpazorps, Ricks from the Citadel dressed like Time Lords from Doctor Who, and Meeseeks. And Rick's only way out is to go so off the rails, doing something that Rick and Morty would never do, doing a huge religious joke, because nobody likes those types of stories. You notice all the gauges, the marketability, the likability, the relatability of the story all fall to zero. And all these characters are parodies of real-life religious-themed TV show characters like VeggieTales. As Morty tries to tie the different vignettes together from the episode, it's then revealed that they're inside another simulation within the simulation of the train, because all the dials in the train are just stickers on a toy train that Morty bought inside the Citadel of Rick's gift shop in real life. Yet another reference to the Inception episode, Simulation Within a Simulation. You could also question whether or not this reality 2 at the end of the episode is real as well, because Rick probably wouldn't ask Morty to kiss him like that. The number 1 is the end tag scene with him yelling about capitalism and the real virus we're all living through watching the episode. Nobody is buying anything now because of this virus. And then the fake ad for the story train. People tried to visit this website. It's not real. They're not actually selling the story train. Jesus in the episode also tries to derail things successfully by calling out to his father, who winds up being the floaty man. There were a billion references in the episode, but it was an episode about making too many references. So let me know if you spotted any big ones that I didn't mention in this video. But episode 7 is next week, so of course my video for that will post next Monday. There's a Clone Wars finale video that I'll post later today. As long as you have alerts enabled for my channel, you should see all those videos when I post them. But everyone click here for my new Avatar: The Last Airbender Netflix teaser trailer. And click here for all my Rick and Morty episodes. Thank you so much for watching. Everyone stay safe. I'll see you guys tonight.